Hello and welcome to the Ferret Business Podcast. I am your host, YemmytheFerret, aka Yemmy. And with me today is he's a retro game lover. And he also loves modern games too. He has a daughter, his wife, and he's a YouTuber. And he goes by the name, The Last Game Hunter. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you. Thanks.
All his links will be down in the description below, including YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff. How are you doing today?
I'm actually pretty good. I just got home from work a little while ago. I had to go to physio because of that wonderful car accident a few months ago, but I'm getting better.
Well, let's start with the car accident, because how bad was that?
It was pretty bad. I was driving basically northbound, and I got clipped, like T-boned on my left side, driver's side, in the front, and that immediately sent me through a light pole. So I went through a light pole and went on another 30 feet into oncoming traffic until the car came to a stop. It was pretty scary.
Do you remember much of the experience, or is it more of just people telling you what happened?
I feel like I was pretty much conscious for it all. I did get a mild concussion out of it, which I'm still kind of having some symptoms on, so I haven't been playing games much lately, which has been kind of a pain because game show.
Right.
But I have been trying. It was when I went through the pole, I kind of braced and I was like, wow, this is going to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And got through it. Weird enough, it went through the pole like butter. Like the car just did not, almost like it was a knife going through it. It was pretty impressive. Scary nonetheless. When the airbags went off,
oh yeah,
I think there might have been a blackout at that point for a very temp. Then I went on to skid into oncoming traffic, and I couldn't see anymore because the airbags were up.
Mm-hmm.
So I was bracing for a third hit because now I've been hit by the girl through the pole, and I was waiting for another car, but I should say fortunately I did not get hit a third time.
Yeah. Have any other moments in your life been as scary as this, or is this like the scariest it's ever, that thing that happened to you?
On a personal level, my daughter, my smallest one, she's 6 now. When she was 18 months, she became a type 1 diabetic.
Oh.
And went in and out of like coma style status, and I had to rush her to the hospital, and when they finally stabilized her, the doctor had told me if I was 15 minutes longer she would have passed.
Jeez.
And that was a pretty scary time in my life.
Yeah, I can only imagine, man.
Yeah.
So, how old are you?
I'm 45.
Oh, just about around the same age as my father.
Yeah, I'm old.
Wait,
but
you have lots of experience, right?
Yeah, I was born in 72. I, basically grew up with pretty much every type of console you can actually think of.
That's a true gamer, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. When I grew up, I didn't really have the game stuff. As I was younger, I basically fell in love with gaming when I went to friends' houses and got to know what this stuff really was, like the Atari and the ColecoVision, and then eventually I got my Master System, and that was it. That was my love right there.
What was the first video game you remember playing?
I'm huge remembrance for Pac-Man and Defender.
Oh, nice. I love Defender. Yeah. I used to play that when I was a kid.
I even have like newer renditions of it. Like there's something for the GameCube and so on. Every time I see Defender, I have to buy it. I don't know why. Just love the game.
It is a pretty good game. I still play it every now and then myself.
Yeah, Pac-Man I used to be really good at. Now, oh my god. Level 3 or something, I start to go, uh-oh.
So, what game system did you say you officially started with?
My love, I guess, two consoles caught my attention. I'm going to call one a console. The Master System, of course, I had to complete it. I do have a complete North American Master System collection, and it was important to me because that system got me through a lot of hard times when I was younger. And so I completed it. just I think last year.
Oh.
So then the console, I think that kind of drew me in hard from the Master System was the Commodore 64.
Oh, nice.
That machine, I went over to a friend's house. I remember, his layout and the craziness and all these, piles of floppy disks, and they're massive. They weren't even like the small 3.5s at that time because, that was more the Amiga. And I just fell in love, and I had to have one. So, unfortunately back then you burnt the games. You really didn't get to go out and buy them very much. But it was just one of those things where I got a taste of like Sega's titles, Nintendo a little, and so many other games. I think there was like 50 some odd thousand games released for that thing. So there was a lot of love, and that drew me in. And then of course I became a huge Sega boy.
I always, anytime that you're playing a game nowadays that has an older, older style to it, like, you'll have those older computers. I just love hearing the sounds of older computers. I grew up with an XP computer, so I'm not like, as, back then, but I still love listening to the sounds of old computers because it's just like, you can hear it running, you can hear it working on things. What do you love most about the older consoles? And computer systems, actually, I should say.
Yeah, the older consoles, I found that the gaming was real. Today, I find that the gaming is really intense and graphic, but there's too much going on to enjoy the games the way I used to. So, I kind of went from being a console gamer at a certain stage in my life to a PC gamer. And the reason for that was I really loved the first-person shooters, but I'm really terrible with a gamepad.
Oh.
With a keyboard and mouse, I dominated the games and it didn't feel good. So even today, when I play like a Let's Play or whatever, and you guys see me playing a Call of Duty or whatever, and you can laugh and watch me die. It's brutal. It is brutal.
A lot of people, they've strayed away from the mouse and keyboard, but me personally, I mean, I like the feel of a mouse and keyboard. It's nice. It feels like you're able to control things a little bit better than if you plugged in an Xbox controller and started using that.
It's faster. The response is amazing versus a gamepad. Now, don't get me wrong. There are people out there with a gamepad that are going to destroy me.
Right.
But if 90% of it, I would say, if you put a gamepad up against me with a mouse, I'm going to destroy them. I remember years ago, Half-Life player just dominated Half-Life, and bragging about how good he was. And then he went to console-based Half-Life. So I took my PC, and I think at some point Half-Life you could cross-platform. You're able to play together, and just the person didn't even have a chance.
Oh man!
Just complete domination, and they zip up real quick. He was a young person too at the time, and I was older still, and I had the experience. But yeah, the PC. There's a lot of love for me for the PC. I haven't talked about a lot of love yet on my channel, but I will be getting into it as I do collect big box and PC games. They're just very, very, very space taking.
Yeah.
But it is definitely probably the hardest hardcore part of my gaming has been PC. And then I just, grew a massive love for anything Sega. And don't get me wrong, I collect for everything. I probably have about 5,000 games.
Wow.
And I do collect for everything. So
that's awesome.
Anything from old to new. My current gen, my favorite is the Xbox One. So yeah, it's fun. It's a pastime.
You've been through a lot of changes in gaming. What do you think was the biggest change for you personally as a gamer? What was it like? Was it the move to 3D? Was it the move from text-based to 2D? What was the hardest, or what was the biggest change to you personally in the gaming world as you were growing up?
Yeah, going from text to graphic was pretty big. That was intense, especially when you were able to walk down corridors and stuff instead of just type, go left, go right. That was kind of huge. But the biggest thing, I'd have to say, is online.
Oh, yeah, really?
Yeah, the whole online that really tore it up. I mean, it was a good and a bad thing. So you have your good, hey, you can play with anybody around the world. That's awesome. And you can make new friends. That's awesome. But you have your bad. Everybody misses couch co-op. Having your buddy sit next to you and play a game.
Definitely.
Or a couple computers in your house and their network to play the game. It was just, really cool. And that changed everything. I mean, networking alone changed a lot. But going online with the games just completely messed the gaming community up. That was a change for the biggest.
Definitely. I agree with you. I know it used to be you go over to your friend's house, you throw in 007 Nightfire, and you play on the PS2, and then all of a sudden they were like, hey, you can go online now, and you never saw your friends again. You were just hearing them all over, when Xbox came out, the party system, you would hear over that, or, stuff like that.
Am I right? And I found that gaming decreased. Because now, not having my friend over or whatever, let's say, he'll call me up and be like, hey, man, you want to play? And I'm like, I don't really feel like it. But if he was next to me or in the same room and he goes, hey, man, let's play this, I'll play it. Because now you feel a little more obligated to play the game, but you're also not doing something else. He's already over. And I find that the online has taken away from that a bit. And I guess that's the one thing I could say in gaming that is a dislike and a like all at the same time.
So I have a list of the top 5 highest selling retro games and their last sale prices, and I was wondering if you wanted to play a little game and see how close you can get to the actual selling price of each game.
I'll give it a shot.
All right, so first up, I'll start with number 5, the lowest. I wouldn't say the lowest selling, but the one that's the lowest on the list. It was called Wrecking Crew. It was for the Nintendo Entertainment System. How much do you think that cartridge sold? And you can say either Canadian dollars or US dollars.
Wrecking Ball. Wow. That one's not drawn. I haven't seen that in a while. I'm going to say 900 Canadian.
It was actually 4.5 thousand Canadian. Would be. It was roughly around there how much it sold for.
So that's a game I have not followed. And somebody was crazy to pay it.
Right, yeah. Well, hey, just you wait.
Oh, here we go, yeah.
Number 4, King of Fighters 2000 for the Neo Geo. How much do you think that sold for?
Everything Neo Geo is really bad. I'm going to say $9,000.
Well, it's just a little bit more than the Wrecking Crew. It was 6.5 thousand Canadian was about the price that it was sold for.
Wow. Still up there. It's crazy.
Still up there, but we're getting even higher now. Next up, Tetris for the Sega Genesis. What do you think that sold for last?
Now there's a rarity. Sega Genesis Tetris. So that's prototype more than anything. I'm going to say that game probably struck into around the 12,000 mark.
Actually, it went up to 20K Canadian dollar.
Wow. That is huge. I remember seeing it around 12, maybe 13. That is huge.
And someone bought it for even more.
and again, let's drive prices up. Like, hey, let's talk about a game we want to be valuable right now because Metal Jesus can do it. And I'm just kidding.
Next up, Birthday Mania for the Atari 2600. How much do you think that sold for?
Birthday Mania. 22,000.
45,000 Canadian dollars was the highest it was selling for.
That is ridiculous. And the worst part about that is when I look up what's hot or what something's worth, you never see those dollar figures.
Right.
Like the rarity guide or whatever, and you hit the rare, and those games just aren't listed at those prices.
Now, I am saying the highest that it ever sold for, right. So it could be, maybe 5 years ago it was that price. I don't know.
Right.
So next, the number one top selling retro game, or how high it sold for. I mean, I'm really dropping the ball right now.
Yeah.
Nintendo World Championship for the NES. How much do you think that sold for?
that one, wasn't it somewhere around 88,000?
Its lowest was 88, but its highest was 106,000 Canadian dollars.
That's ridiculous.
That is pretty ridiculous.
That is ridiculous. I thought, when I was completing my Master System collection, and I had to get Buster Douglas Boxing, which is the most expensive game for the for the Master System collection.
Mm-hmm.
I almost cried. I'm like, oh my god! And then I luckily got it for a smoking gun deal, and I was so happy. But wow, I mean, and I was just like, I don't want to spend $1,000 for it.
Right?
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So yeah, I get it.
So
it's like Mega Man for the Game Gear.
Oh,
Last year I could have bought it for $80. Today you're buying it for $1,000+.
wow. Jeez. I couldn't even imagine spending that amount of money.
It's gotta fall in my hand at this point. I love my Game Gear, but come on.
And nowadays with the virtual consoles and the mini consoles, stuff like that, it's not like it defeats the purpose of buying the older games as they are, but it kind of replaces, those higher ranking ones. You can actually play them without spending, $88,000.
Yeah.
So speaking of those classic consoles, how do you feel about those, the classic NES coming back and the classic Nintendo Entertainment System? Do they still play like they used to, or they got that newer feeling to them?
They're very close. I'll give it that. They're very, very close. For the average consumer that just wants to play the old games, jump on it. It's great. It's good that way. Punch Out, forget it. Punch Out was a wash. For example, I could never get the NES Classic. I did get a Super NES Classic.
Mm-hmm.
But here in Canada, oh my God, you're lucky to see one in a store. And by the time you go to grab it, somebody's like jumped over you and it's gone.
Oh, man.
Yeah, don't dare watch it from a distance. It was just brutal.
Funny thing is, I think there's 3 at my local Best Buy that are just sitting on a counter somewhere.
That wouldn't surprise me, and that really upsets me. And funny enough, I do some work in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and I go down to our warehouse down there, and of course, first thing I'm doing off my off time was going to go out and find an NES Classic. Not a one. I must have went to 20 different stores. And then I go down, 2-3 months ago, and there's Super NES Classics everywhere.
Yeah.
I already have one, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the type of guy that buys just because it's there and, I have like a multiple. I don't sell. So it's very rare that, there's the odd time I got to get rid of something because I've gotten too many at a yard sale or whatever the case is. And some cases I keep them, like I did some giveaways recently on the channel. My intention's never to hoard 10 of those systems because they're going to be worth more later on.
That's admirable, Those people who just buy up 15 consoles online. I mean, it's just like, come on. I understand there's resale value right away, but it's like, can we just share?
Yeah. And Nintendo, you know what? It was cool that Nintendo decided to. They helped. They really helped ignite and refresh the retro market. They did. Doing those consoles outsold their main consoles.
Right.
Let's be honest. They did. They outsold their consoles.
Especially the Wii U.
Yeah, and I think they've still outsold the Switch.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure of it. So when you got a console like that, people are hot for that. But the other problem is people were just buying it because it was cool, and now they're just sitting around everywhere, right? Because there's people that thought they really wanted to be nostalgic and play those old games, and they start playing it, and they're back to their Xbox.
Right.
Right? That's kind of sad because people that really wanted them couldn't get them. But it was cool that Nintendo did the idea, and but Nintendo's really, it's a good word to use without being horrible.
They're bad with
Their marketing is crap.
Yeah, with marketing, yeah.
And they're trying to monopolize on something that, was there because we had a love for it. And yeah, the retro market's going to buy it up. It's cool. It's nostalgia. Later on, it's going to be something that people are going to say, "Oh, you got one of those?" You know what I mean? So it's cool. But they released the product properly. That's all I ask.
So
I like the HD, the new HD Genesis. Everybody's down on it. I personally think it's a great little machine. Again, people are looking at it too hard. The retro gamers that are downing it aren't looking at what it was marketed for. They didn't market it for you and me. They marketed it for the guy that wanted to play the old Sega stuff and can't afford to buy those cartridges.
Right. So I guess one of the last questions for you today is, what would be the next system you would want to see redone as like a classic, a mini, a classic, or whatever you want to call it?
Dreamcast.
Ooh, that was fast.
The answer is Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And if I had to take something else, it'd be the Saturn. Those two consoles, wow. I mean, the Dreamcast lives up today. Like, people are still producing stuff for that. And the Dreamcast had so much potential and, such a short life. And now probably the biggest following of any real console. The following on the Dreamcast is massive.
Oh, yeah.
And I think Sega is stupid not to look at that and go, hey, I think they teamed up with Retrobit recently to make, and don't get me wrong, so far from what I've seen from the Retrobit, like their new gamepads, the wireless stuff and everything that's coming out for the Saturn, the Genesis, and the Dreamcast is based on the quality that Sega had produced, which is great. But give them a little more freedom. But the problem is, when the other companies, like for example, At Games, I have no idea why they can't get the Genesis right, because they do a decent job on every other console.
Right.
And the biggest thing that people talk about is the audio. Okay, if you're a perfectionist, it's different. If it's not, if you're not, then it's a good system. But Sega needs to make the system, not everybody else. They're still making hardware. They're still doing stuff that we don't know about. We're not dumb. They still make arcades, so they're still producing hardware that could be a console. Why not? With today's technology, you could make a mini Dreamcast, no problems.
Definitely.
No problems.
So the final question I have for you today is, and this is something I've been looking at the entire time that we have been talking here. On your banner for YouTube, you have a light phaser and 3D glasses for your Sega Master System. I have no clue what those are for. If you could shed some light onto that for me.
The light phaser and the 3D glasses? Okay, so the light phaser was basically, the same like Nintendo for shooting games. And the shooting games for the Master System were phenomenal. There was a pile, whereas Nintendo made like 2 or 3.
Like Duck Hunt and one other.
Right. Master System, the pack-in was Safari Hunt, and then they moved on to make probably, 6 or 7 actual good gun games that are actually decently hard. So, and the technology in the Master System gun was so more superior than the Nintendo one. It was more accurate, and it was just built better. The 3D glasses, now that is something totally cool. So, Sega in 1989, I'm guessing it's roughly, I think, 89, they put out these 3D glasses. And these glasses are the same type of technology we seen years ago into 3D TVs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they were using a shutter system. So Nintendo at the time, tried to do this 3D thing, and you got a cardboard red and blue glasses. Ooh, boy. Sega powered their glasses up off the Master System, so it actually has a piece that plugs into your card slot.
Oh, that's awesome.
And yeah, so it plugs into the card slot, and there's a wire that comes up that plugs into your glasses, or glasses plug into the card. And there was a good, I think there's about six to 7 games that are 3D games that are actually 3D games.
Whoa, that's amazing.
Yeah, the technology, they were so far ahead of their time, and they proved it over and over and over, because you had your Master System, which was way technically more advanced than Nintendo could ever dream of. And then the Genesis came along, which technically was more advanced than the SNES. And then it just kept going, so then the 32X, more power, and so on. They were very innovative, but the innovations also what hurt them, because they were too far ahead of their time. And people didn't understand, like the Dreamcast had capability of playing games online. No other console even knew what that was.
Yeah, that was when I learned about that, I was like, what?
Yeah, so I mean, and it was an actual pack-in part. It wasn't, you had to go out and buy the modem. It was already in the console. It was part of the deal. And it just showed over and over and over. I mean, look at the controller. Look at that VMU that went in it, and then the storage capabilities, or your loadout for your game, and your weapons and your ammo show up on the screen on your joystick, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, in turn became, I'm going to call it Dreamcast 2, the Xbox. So the Xbox was designed off the Dreamcast. And the controller originally was the Dreamcast controller, right down to the VMU type system, and they got rid of it because then people realized they were actually copying the Dreamcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the deal was, Microsoft and Sega were in bed together that the Dreamcast was actually to play Dreamcast games on the Xbox.
Uh-huh.
But then it all went sour. So it's just their advancements there, and of course, which made me mad. You get the PlayStation 2 and then the Xbox, both then go into the network online gaming capability, and everybody accepted it.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dreamcast was never accepted.
One last question I had that just came to my head. They're actually planning on re-releasing Xboxes. They're planning on re-releasing the big Fat Boy original controller for the Xbox One.
The Duke.
Does that interest you at all, or is that like a, oh, of course they're doing this kind of thing?
It definitely does, and if it's Microsoft made, okay? If it's Microsoft made, it's got nostalgia, it's cool. The Duke was what started the whole Xbox thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to this day, a lot of people like the Duke more than they like the smaller controller.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I have a couple Dukes put away just because I don't want to break them. But they're getting hard to find now.
That's true, man. Yeah, a lot of collectors out there are holding on to theirs because they know it's a rarity now. A lot of those like Xbox era, PS2 era, they're starting to become the retro of my generation. Actually, I know
Absolutely.
Technically the N64 is my generation, but I grew up more with playing the PlayStation and the GameCube and stuff like that. Those are actually becoming more the retro games now, and it's kind of weird. Like it's like the music, it's the same thing with music. It's like, oh, this is an oldie now. It's from the 90s, though. it's
Absolutely. We're starting to see a huge price jump on CD-based games now, and people have forgotten about it. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but it's true. We're starting to see PS2 games go through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Games that were $5 or $80. We're starting to see weird things happening because they're forgotten about. Right? Xbox are actually funny. Xbox is my go-to console because of Sega, because of the Move. And the original Xbox, I'm probably about halfway complete. I got a lot of their consoles from the Mountain Dew and so on, which I'm hoping to show a room tour this weekend if I can ever clean this place up. But it's amazing.
Well, thank you once again to the Last Gamer the Last Game Hunter, I'm sorry, for coming on the podcast, for talking to me all the way from Canada. First Canadian interview. That's a badge of honor. You can pin that to your shirt and just wear it around. I was the first Canadian on the Ferret Business Podcast.
I could say, how's it going, eh?
Is there anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, guys. Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun. It's literally my first interview, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
All right. Once again, his links will be down in the description below. YouTube, Twitter, all that fun stuff. Make sure you check him out if you love retro games. I mean, come on. He does a comparison of an SNES classic and a clone. I mean, that's the fucking most interesting thing I can think of right now. Like, I'm... and hey, I am your host, YemmytheFerret, and this has been another episode of the Ferret Business Podcast.